Storytime, I was the toxic best friend. So a little background information, I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And at the beginning of the year, I met this girl who we're gonna call Riley. Riley and I hit it off straight away. Like a week after knowing each other, she knew everything about me and I knew everything about her. Well, then she tells me about this guy that she's talking to, who we're gonna call Jay. She said that they would hook up sometimes and he would text her sometimes, but she said that I couldn't tell anybody because he said that it had to be a secret. So I tried telling her that he sounded like a fuckboy, but she decided she was going to do whatever she wanted, and I was like, okay. So fast forward to the end of the year, he adds me on Snapchat. Okay, don't get me wrong, he was really hot, but I had my own thing going on, so I really didn't pay that much attention to him, and I thought he maybe added me on Snapchat to be like, oh my god, I really like your best friend. And then I also was caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I tell my best friend that the guy that she likes just added me on Snapchat? Or do I lie to her? Well, I was going to tell her until I got a Snapchat from him, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I was the toxic best friend. So like I said, I didn't know whether I should tell her that he added me on Snapchat or if I should. And I was going to until I got a Snapchat from him saying, hey, you're really pretty. I think we should talk sometime. So I ended up telling her about it because I felt really bad. And she was like, this is why I can't trust girls. Like, you need to unadd him right now. Like, fucking block him. And I'm like, I didn't even do anything. Like, what the fuck? So whatever. I end up blocking him. It's fine. Until he texts me one day. And he's like, hey, it's Jay. I think you blocked me on Snapchat, LOL. And him and I had talked a little bit in school and I kind of started to like him. Well, fast forward, him and I ended up hooking up a few times. We were talking a lot. And he hadn't been texting Riley as much. Well, the one night while I was sleeping over at her house, my phone was going off a lot. And I didn't think to delete any of the messages, like for part 3. Part 3 about how I was the toxic best friend. So like I said, I was sleeping over her house the one night, my phone was blowing up, and she knows my password and everything, and I stupidly did not delete the text messages between Jay and I. And I kid you not, I wake up to a slap across the face. It felt like she slapped me with her fist, and it looked like it too because I had a black eye. So I woke up and she's like, what the fuck? Like, I hate you so much. Like, why would you do this? And I look down and she has my phone right in her hand on the text messages with Jay. And I ended up feeling really bad because she started crying, saying that, like, I knew that she liked him a lot. And I also knew the reason why he wasn't texting her as much. Well, then she ran downstairs and she told her mom. And the next thing I know, I had her mom, and her 3 other sisters screaming at me. And then I got blocked by Jay because she wasn't supposed to know, and she leaked his nudes.
Storytime about how my boyfriend pretended to be in love with me to get close to my mom. My boyfriend and I had been dating for 2 months. It started with anonymous emails. He started sending me love letters, I guess. Me being a love-deprived teenager, I fell into it. Started writing back to him asking who he was, and he told me he was my secret admirer. To be honest with you guys, this was totally thrilling to me. It was the first time ever I was getting attention from a guy. Whenever I had a crush on a guy, they would never ever talk to me. Like, they wouldn't even know I existed. Mostly because I'm super shy and I never talk to guys. But I'm also just not very confident and I have very low self-esteem. Clearly, he took advantage of that. After a month of us writing to each other, I finally asked him if he wanted to meet with me. Keep in mind, he did not ask to meet me. I'm the idiot that asked him to meet me. I asked him to meet me out in a mall because obviously I thought it was safer to meet in a public place. When we first met, he was totally charming and really cute. He gave me my first kiss and I was totally in love with him. Like, literally right then and there, I was in love. And he even asked me to be his girlfriend that very same day. And of course, I said yes. But here's the thing. He asked me to keep the relationship a secret from my parents. I asked him why and he said that they probably wouldn't like that he was a little bit older than me. I was 17 and he was 22. So I had a secret relationship now. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my boyfriend used me to get close to my mom. After he told me not to tell my parents about our relationship, I got really upset. I told him I didn't feel comfortable with that. But of course, he managed to convince me. So I had a boyfriend at 17 and he was 22. And it was a secret. A few weeks after our relationship, he started sneaking into my house. He would come up to my bedroom and we would only kiss. But here's where it gets scary. One time my parents were out and he wanted to go into my parents' bedroom. And when we did, he went straight to my mom's underwear drawer. He even started looking through her closet. And he opened up all of her drawers and looked through everything. I kept telling him we needed to get out of my parents' room in case if they came home, but he wouldn't. And he went into my parents' bathroom and started looking through everything. When he thought I wasn't looking, he sprayed some of my mom's perfume on him. At the time, I thought he was just playing around. A few days later, my mom started asking me if I had seen some of her underwear. I told her I didn't, but I knew what had happened. My boyfriend stole 2 pairs of my mom's underwear. I was so scared and disgusted. I asked him to come over to my house again, and he did. He snuck up through my window, and as soon as he did, I asked him about my mom's underwear. That's when he got really angry at me and started telling me that I was crazy. He even called me a pervert. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend used me to get close to my mom. After my mom told me that her underwear had disappeared, I confronted my boyfriend. I knew that he had stolen them. But when I confronted him, he denied it and called me a pervert. Finally, a few days later, my parents came to me and told me that my mom had a stalker and that he must have been the one that stole my mom's underwear. That's when I confessed everything to them. I told them I'd had a secret boyfriend who was a little bit older than me and that he came into our house and that I let him go into my parents' bedroom and search my mom's closet and bathroom. My mom started to cry and my dad was really angry. They called the cops right away. Come to find out that my boyfriend had been stalking my mom for 6 months. He apparently met her at the gym and he couldn't get over her, and that he started talking to me because he wanted to get close to her. My mom finally got a restraining order, and he told the police that I was an easy target, and that he only started talking to me because he wanted to get into our house. But get this, he had snuck into our house several times before, when I was home by myself. He even took a nap in my parents' bed. He had stolen over 40 things from my mom, and he had a shrine of her in his house. I'm totally traumatized and will never trust a man again. What should I do?
Tender touch, drunk love, staying up, just talk to you. You stayed in touch, 2 continents, through all odds. Seems every night, yeah, all the time I'm calling out to you. Seems every time I take a drink, I'm reaching out.
Story time about how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend's dad is an absolute dilf. He used to be a competitive bodybuilder and even did some modeling back in the day. Well, let's just say my boyfriend didn't turn out with the same looks. Don't get me wrong, my boyfriend is really sweet, but he's not the best looking guy. One of the reasons we started dating and I really liked him was because of how considerate and loving he was. We started off as friends and he would take me out to dinner, wine and dine me. Eventually asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. We both come from wealthy families, and our families loved the idea of us being together. Exactly a year ago, we moved in together, and he got a new job that required him to travel a lot. Well, he asked his dad to come check on me. So his dad would come over, we would watch movies, and just hang out. But one night we decided to do some drinking. I got super tipsy, and so did he. One thing led to another, and we ended up, And after that, we did it over and over. Of course, my boyfriend's dad felt super guilty, and so did I. I mean, he was cheating on his wife with me, and I was cheating on his son with him. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After my boyfriend's dad and I had hooked up a couple of times, of course, he felt really guilty, and so did I. We decided to end things cordially and never tell anyone about it. Fast forward to when my boyfriend comes home from his work trip. I had to pretend like nothing happened, but it was really hard because at this point I definitely caught feelings for my boyfriend's dad. I became really distant from my boyfriend and he started noticing. He also asked me one day if his dad came over to check up on me, which I said yes. After that, things were just not the same between my boyfriend and I. He would always ask me why I never touched him or kissed him, and I would just say that I felt bad or that I had my period. A month later, my boyfriend goes on another work trip. My boyfriend even invited me to come on the work trip, but I said no. Instead, as soon as he left, I called his dad and told him to come over. I told him I just wanted to talk, but really, his dad came over, we talked for about an hour, and then it happened again. It's like we just couldn't help ourselves. That's when he told me that he was catching feelings for me and that maybe even wanted to get a divorce. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend's dad tells me that he wants to get a divorce from his wife because he's catching feelings for me. He even suggested that we could move away to another town. And yes, at this point, I had totally fallen for him too. But at the same time, I still had a relationship with his son. But to be honest with you guys, I didn't have the guts to tell my boyfriend that I loved his dad. Since my boyfriend was still on the work trip, his dad would come over almost every single day. His wife, aka my mother-in-law, didn't even notice that she was coming over to my place. She thought he was at work and at the gym. We are now fully in love. My boyfriend came back from his work trip and of course, I was still distant. A few days later, he asked me what was wrong and I just don't know what to tell him. His dad told me to keep quiet for now because he wants to figure out what to do. I don't want to end a marriage and I know I don't want to break my boyfriend's heart. But at the same time, I am in love with his dad. I know you guys are going to think I'm a terrible person, but I genuinely need your advice. What do you guys think I should do? Should I be honest with my boyfriend? Part 4 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. After my stepson and I got caught in his bedroom by his mother, aka my husband's ex-wife, they forbade us from talking to each other or even seeing each other. My stepson moved out of our house and I literally haven't spoken to him in about a week and a half. Here's the thing, my husband didn't really react the way I thought he would. He was definitely angry about me hooking up with his son, but he wasn't really angry about me having an affair. But the night that he found out, he told me he was also having an affair and that it was one of his employees. Basically the same way his relationship and mine started. If you haven't seen part 1, you should go see Garcia. In part 1, I tell you that he cheated on his wife with me. In other words, my husband definitely has an MO. A few days later, my husband grabs my purse from me and cuts up all my credit cards. He even took my name off of our shared bank account. So even though I live in this beautiful mansion with lots of fancy cars, I don't have any money of my own. Then he told me that it was his ex-wife's idea to take all the money away from me. I guess she must think I'm a gold digger. I convinced my husband to give me an allowance. I mean, I still have to do my nails. But things get complicated again. My stepson DM me on Instagram. Part 5 is Part 6 of how I got caught hooking up with my stepson again. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram, not my story time. So hubby comes in and finds his stepson and I sitting on the couch. That's when my stepson, I have to stop calling him my stepson, more like my boyfriend now. He confronts his dad and tells him that we are in love. He even told him that we want to get married and move in together. That's when hubby accuses me of brainwashing his son into having an affair with me. Then he accused me of brainwashing him too into having an affair with him. That's when the doorbell rings. Yep, it's my husband's ex-wife and my stepson's mom. She starts calling me a homewrecker, saying that I took her husband away and now I'm taking her son away. Trust me, I understand where this woman is coming from. My stepson explained everything to her, and the fight went on for about 3 hours. Oh yeah, remember I told you guys I took a pregnancy test that was false? Well, I started feeling sick the other day, so I went and got another pregnancy test, and that one came out positive. My stepson and I went to the doctor, and it's confirmed I am pregnant. My husband finally agreed to give me the divorce, and he also gave my stepson his trust fund. So now we have a lot of money, and we're looking for our own house together. I guess everything has turned out pretty good, but I've been banned from every family event in the future. Should I do a part 7, you guys? Thank you for listening to my story. Storytime about how I cheated on my husband, lied about getting pregnant, and left with all his money. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Oh, this is gonna be a good one, you guys. A little background, my husband and I met 2 years ago. And lucky for me, he's a wealthy plastic surgeon. So a little backstory. I actually met him because I wanted to get a nose job. I made an appointment in his office and I went. We actually hit it off right away, even though he's older than me and, you know, wasn't the best looking. After the appointment, I decided I would get the nose job. A few days later, I get a phone call. Guess who it is? It's the wealthy plastic surgeon who I just saw. He asked me out on a date and I said yes, of course. By the way, at the time I was a sugar baby, so I had a few sugar daddies. I figured he would just become another sugar daddy. He took me out to the best restaurant in town, and you better believe I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. After my surgery, he would bring me food and was just really nice. Then he asked me to be his girlfriend and I decided to give him a chance. I even broke up with 2 sugar daddies to make space for him. That's when I asked my boyfriend for an allowance. He said of course. There's so much more to the story. Part 2 is up. Part 2 about how I cheated on my husband, lied about being pregnant, oh yeah, and stole all of his money. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. This was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, I had asked him for an allowance. Of course he said yes and offered me $3,000 a month. I accepted even though it was on the low end. By the way, I still had 1 sugar daddy at this time. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I was pretty obsessed with the Kardashians. My goal in life is to look like Kim K. So now that I had a plastic surgeon boyfriend, I decided to ask him what other surgeries he thinks I could do. I already had my nose job. Now I definitely wanted to do some other stuff on my body. But when I told him, he got really upset. He said I didn't need to change anything about me and that I needed to stop looking for attention from other men. That's when I told him that would be totally impossible and that I definitely was going to keep my other sugar daddy. He totally flips out because he didn't know I had a sugar daddy. Then he asked me if I was actually in love with him. I told him that love would grow eventually, but that I really did like him. Then he started playing hard to get, like he wanted me to apologize and beg him, but I was not the type. So we ended up not speaking for a few weeks. Eventually he comes over to my apartment and asks me what surgeries I want to get done. And back to the surgery table I went. Part 3 is up. Part 3 about how I cheated on my husband, lied about being pregnant, oh yeah, and stole all of his money. Well, almost all of it. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So my plastic surgeon boyfriend decides to do more plastic surgery on me. But this time, it was free. We decided to get my bum done. Again, during the healing process, he was a total angel and brought me food and took care of me. Yeah, he was also paying for all of my bills and my rent at this time, even though I still had a sugar daddy. And he knew it. A few months passed and he asked me to go to Italy with him. Of course I said yes. We stayed at a beautiful place in Tuscany and then he asked me to marry him. He had planned out this whole romantic dinner and of course I had to say yes. But on one condition, condition that I let go of my last sugar daddy. So I told him I would, although I actually did not. So we started planning my dream wedding. We finally got married and I moved into his mansion. Then he told me that I had to get pregnant right away. His excuse is that he's in his 50s and he really wants to have kids. I said I wanted to have a baby too, but I kept taking the pill. I mean, I am just not ready to have kids or to ruin my beautiful body. This is when my other sugar daddy started getting really annoyed because I never spent time with him. It was really hard being torn between two men. Part 4 is up. Part 4 about how I cheated on my husband, lied about being pregnant, and stole all of his money. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said, my sugar daddy was starting to get really annoyed at me because I never spent enough time with him. That's when I broke it to him that I was actually married. He totally flipped out, called me a user, cut me off, and blocked me from everything. So that meant I was not getting money from this sugar daddy at all. It meant I was totally dependent on my husband. Remember I said my husband wanted me to get pregnant? Well, I kept taking the pill because I didn't want to get pregnant, but my husband would ask me every single day how that was going. And I was like, it's going. I even started lying, saying that I was going to go to the baby doctor just to get myself checked, and I really wouldn't. Instead, I would go have lunch and shop. Around this time, an old sugar daddy of mine contacted me, who I still had a crush on. He was like super good looking. He offered me some money and asked me if I wanted to go on a few dates, so of course I said yes. I accepted because I really wanted to just separate myself financially from my husband. I didn't want to be dependent on him all the time. So when my husband was at work, I would go out on dates with this new sugar daddy. The sugar daddy wanted me to go on a trip with him, and I had to say no. He got really upset and started asking questions. Of course, I didn't tell him that I was married, but he started getting really suspicious. He also started to catch feelings really quick. Like, he always wanted to be with me. He would text me all the time, and that's when my husband finds a text message from the sugar daddy. I basically denied everything and I told him that I no longer had any sugar daddies, but my husband did not believe me. That's when he calls my sugar daddy from my phone and tells him to leave me alone. And the sugar daddy told him that only I could make that decision. So I basically had to cut off the sugar daddy right in front of my husband. My husband was like really angry at this time, so I was on my best behavior for the next few weeks. But after a few weeks, he was still really angry, so I realized I needed to start taking money out of the account that he gave me. So I started transferring money from his account to my account, and then from my account to another account at a different bank. And guess what? My husband did not notice one bit. He had several other accounts and investments and all this other stuff, so he never really noticed if anything went missing from that one account. After a few months, I had $50,000 in that bank account. I knew it wasn't enough, so I had to start taking more money out. And then a few months after that, I was at $120,000. I knew this was enough to get me a little house somewhere and just like basically live by myself. That's when I devised a whole plan. I would leave the country and buy myself a house. Even started looking for a real estate agent in other countries. But then the poo hit the fan. My husband found my pills and asked me if I was actually trying to get pregnant or not. Once again, I started lying and I told him that of course I wanted to have a baby with him. Then he insisted we go to the doctor together. That's when he found out that I had not gone to the doctor once. He told me that if I didn't want kids, we would have to get a divorce, so I told him that I didn't want kids. That's when I told him I wanted a divorce and that I only wanted half of his stuff. He started laughing in my face and left. I knew I had to act quick because it was a matter of time before he found out I stole all that money. The very next day, I booked a flight and left. He started blowing up my phone, asking me where I was, calling me. Then he started threatening me for taking all the money in the bank account and that he hired private investigators to find me. Now I'm considering going back to him, but I honestly don't know what to do. I got myself a cute little house and even found a new sugar daddy. But I know he's still looking for me. What should I do, you guys? I think I really messed up, you guys.
You've got the most beautiful diamond. You've got the most beautiful diamond eyes I've ever seen in my whole life. The skyline is jealous, I'm looking at you, how you shine.
People, do you have any stories of family begging for money? Some background info. I, 20 male, started to live with my bio father and his wife a week ago. My mother died when I was 18, and since this house has been passed down on my mother's family for generation, I legally inherited it. My mom and bio father divorced when I was younger. I was never really close to him, to be clear. If I were to rate our relationship, it would be 3 out of 10. I don't know the reason, but we're just pretty civil to each other. Last year, he married this woman somewhere abroad, and although I was invited, I didn't go because that woman and me are practically strangers. We never talked before, and I only know her appearance from a picture. Because of the global issue, my bio father asked if they can live here for a while since his pay was recently cut down, so it's hard to keep living in their apartment. Since we have a decent relationship with each other and him saying that they'll agree to any condition I set, I won't dive further into the conditions, just normal roommate stuff, like not meddling with each other's business, I let them in last week. The first few days were actually pretty normal, just some snide comments from his wife when he's not around about my lifestyle, my house, my decorations, my garden, and whatever she thinks is not good enough. I just always answer her with, "It's my life, I'm an adult in my own home. I would appreciate it if you don't voice out your unsolicited opinions." Then yesterday, for whatever reason it is, she just barged into my room, demanded for me to be healthy and bond with them more, then proceeded to take my laptop, which I paid for, and my own separate modem, which I also pay for. Of course, I was irritated, and irritated said, "What are you doing?" She replied with, "I'm making you live a healthier life. From now on, I will regulate your use of internet and laptop. I will be in charge under this roof." After hearing that, I can't help but laugh. I just laughed real hard at her face. Like, "Which? This is my house and I provide for myself." I just answered her with, "You high or something? Seems you forgot this is not your house. This is my house. You don't get to make the rules here, I do. Disturb me once more and I'll make sure you live in the streets." My father was livid last night and he demanded me to apologize to her. Of course I didn't, lol. I just reiterated what I said to her, that this is my house and if they have problems or whatsoever, they're free to live in the streets. Now some of my cousins are telling me that I shouldn't have used my house that I inherited from Mom to shut them up, especially now due to the global situation. I don't really care about the two of them, but I value my cousin's opinion. Am I the idiot here? Not the idiot. Doesn't sound like you use the "my house" thing often. This is exactly when you should, when she somehow feels like she should be in control. In what world would she be the one making the rules? She sounds painfully entitled. Maybe this is a pride thing for her. You definitely needed to remind her where she lives. This kind of behavior is unacceptable. If your cousins have a problem with it, they can take them in. Plus, you know, if it was her house, she would be more than happy to let you know her house, her rules. I wonder if Opie's father originally told her it was his house. Not the idiot. Let me get this straight. Your father's wife tried to confiscate your own personal stuff while being a guest in the home you own? What? Tell her to get bent. Tell your father to get bent. Tell every single person who wants you to apologize that they need to get bent. Shut that nonsense down hard. And if she tries again and manages to actually leave the room with the electronics, call the police for theft of personal property. You are not wrong, but their behaviors are definitely going to escalate. Put them out before they can establish tenancy. Let the cousins who think you're wrong house them. Yes, this. Things will escalate. Clearly, this stepmother wants to establish dominance here in a house she doesn't own with an adult who isn't her child. Get them out now, because this is only going to get worse. Okay, so I'm the youngest of 5 and this mess only revolves around me, female 29, my just older sis, 31, and our older brother, 36. 2 older sisters aren't part of this, thankfully. Okay, so I currently live with my girlfriend at what was my grandma's home, but I bought said home from Mom a bit back for cheap. The house wasn't pristine and I've sunk a few thousand into it already and it's looking better. Well, my mom lived in our childhood home with 31-year-old sis and bro for the last forever. 2 oldest sisters live in different states. Other sister and bro never moved out for longer than a year each before moving back. Both are absolute slobs who refuse to clean up after themselves, and they made our mom clean up after them. She couldn't stand mess and would clean just so she wouldn't have to live in filth. Eventually she, in her 60s, couldn't stand to live there anymore, so I asked her to come live with me. They essentially drove our mother out of her own home because they were slobs. Well, she lived with me happily, my house is clean and she didn't have to work, and just enjoyed her time in the garden. But she passed away not too long ago. I've barely been coping because out of all my siblings I was closest with our mom. Our personalities just meshed well, whereas my siblings didn't. She loved them. She wouldn't have cared for them for so long if she didn't, but they stressed her out unbelievably. Well, I found out our mom left her house to me only. She left each of my sibs some money, but the house and everything of hers in it is now mine. My sibs who live in that house didn't like it and pitched a fit. Said I manipulated Mom at her weakest into getting the house when they should have gotten it. I told her to buzz off, and the only reason it probably got left to me is because Mom knew I'd at least remember to pay the property tax each year so the house wouldn't get taken. Neither of them pays any bills, save for their phone bills, so she probably doubted they keep the house long if she gave it to them. Well, they expected me to follow in Mom's footsteps and pay all the bills there for them. I laughed and told them that going forward they'd be paying rent and all utilities if they wanted to stay there, and they'd need to keep the place clean or they were out. They flipped their crap and screamed that it was their childhood home and I couldn't do this. I said the deed is in my name, so I very much can. I sent them a letter that basically said they can either pay rent or they'd be out. They refused, so I sent them another letter saying they had 30 days to vacate the premises because I'd sold the house. They went nasty, but they didn't have a leg to stand on, so they bailed. I've since cleaned the place up. It looked like a den and cost a lot to deep clean and fix stuff, and I'm renting it out to a nice Asian couple who have lots of exotic fish. Told some friends I lied about selling the house, and they said it was an awful move. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your mom probably left you the property because she knew you would take care of it, not just pay the bills, especially after seeing you fix up your grandma's house. You are not wrong. I do, however, recommend forming an LLC to own the house. If I do a public record search with the street address, it'll tell me who owns the house, and with further digging, I can find out where you live. All of this is public record. If an LLC owns the house, then on public record it'll just say owned by Northeast Property Group. Fake name, you can name it whatever you want. My family has done this in the past to protect themselves from spiteful tenants who get kicked to the curb. I'm not the owner, it's owned by Northeast Property Group. I didn't evict you, someone from Northeast Property Group did. I feel like considering the siblings don't even pay bills, they won't go through the effort to do a public record search, LMAO. That being said, not a bad idea just in case. Not the idiot for evicting them, however I wonder if the eviction was technically legal given the reason was false. Just be careful that they can't sue you for this. Long story short, the Hubs and I have two daughters, one aged 21, one aged 18. We put $80,000 away for both of them in a life kickstarting fund. Basically a college fund, but not in one of those college fund only accounts in case college wasn't something they wanted to do. Could be used for trade school, down payment on house, starting a business, etc. And when the time was right, we told them both if they got pregnant before they left home, we'd be using their kickstart money to pay for the child so they could finish high school and not be SOL by having to drop out or something else bad. Soon, older daughter got pregnant, went after the father for child support, but his family doesn't have much, so the judge didn't award her and her son much. So we had to use her kickstart fund to pay for her pregnancy, and my grandson's, well, just being alive. By the time she got out of high school, it was very nearly depleted, so she just asked for the rest in cash to get an apartment when she moved out at 19. My other daughter started college this year, virtually of course, but still, using her Kickstart Life Fund money of course. I guess my older daughter thought we used all of both funds to pay for her child, because once she found out her sister still had some, she started demanding some so she could go to college too. When we said no, she accused us of playing favourites, and has basically gone no contact since early October. Did we mess up? Were my husband and I idiots here? You are not the idiots. Why should something she did negatively impact her younger sister? Her sister didn't get pregnant in high school, she did. She did so knowing that she would have struggles because of it. There is no reason her sister should have to pay for her child or her college. Exactly, you are not wrong. You would be playing favourites if you gave her that money. Did she really expect you to give all of that 160 grand for her having a baby? Your oldest daughter chose having a baby over college, your younger daughter should not be punished for it. Not the idiot on account of equally sharing the money between them for the purpose intended. You were clear from the start. Side note as to your question, did we mess up? Well, I wonder what such a young girl has intimacy, doesn't know about proper protection or the morning after pill, and decided to keep the baby casually assuming mom and dad will foot the bill, and then goes no contact when reality is explained to her. I guess that at least some parenting went wrong there, but that is just my 2 cents. These are some good points. I'm not sure about the value in the telling two young girls that if they ended up pregnant in high school, their parents will take care of all expenses. Having said that, some kids have all the education and opportunity that a parent can offer and refuse to take advantage. This is a little bit messy, but bear with me please. I, nearly adult female, have a younger sister. We have different dads, our mom isn't with either of them and no shame towards her, doesn't have any contact information or even a surname for my sister's dad. This is important information. Today, I borrowed €5 off my sister to pay for something for school because Mam couldn't afford it. She's still on the PUP. My sister casually mentioned it to my mam after school before I got home, and my mam rang me saying get home now. I get home and my mam started shouting at me. I kinda let her shout for a while until she got to, you get so much more than what your sister does. Your dad sends you €50 on the 10th of each month. Why couldn't you have used that? I tried explaining that I used literally all of my money, even what I had saved on Christmas this year, so I didn't have it, and what I needed for school had to be paid for today, and that I couldn't just wait until the 10th, and I do have every intention of paying her back. Note, my mum buys an awful lot more for my sister to compensate, and I usually give my sister some money each month. She went off saying how I was ungrateful and how it's not fair on my sister that my dad does stuff for me, but she doesn't have a dad to do stuff for her. She eventually said that she was going to tell him to stop sending me money every month. This annoyed me. She barely talks to my dad and doesn't pay for much for me bar food. I got angry and said, it's not my fault you slept with a stranger from a pub raw 15 years ago and never got a phone number for him, and left the room. Mam's not talking to me now. My older sister, 22, also different dad, hers is dead and she got the same treatment when he was alive, says Mam had it coming, but my younger sister says I should have just stood there and taken the yelling. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your mum's reaction to you borrowing €5 from your sister was very odd. Also, her attempt at overcompensating for your sister's lack of a dad involves being cruel and unfair towards you and your older sister. This is not okay. I'm sorry you have to deal with all this. While your comment was harsh, albeit amusing from a reader's perspective, it only came after you had to listen to her stream of mistreatment. Don't dish out what you can't take. Frankly, it sounds like your comment was a long time coming. Maybe it will prompt your mum to wake up. How much you want to bet she's angry because OP's dad has the good sense to give her the money directly, whereas the mother prefers that she gets the money, so it could be used for a few pints while looking for baby daddy number 4. You are not wrong. Reading what you said to her made me cackle. I'm guessing you're Irish as well, which made it sound even better in my head. In all seriousness, she's projecting her crap onto you here. You're still very young. It was only €5. Unless you're constantly borrowing money and never paying it back, I don't see the issue. You having a dad about is nothing to do with it, and she's clearly resentful. It sounds like she's had a lot of struggles and like she may be taking it out on you. Please read the post before making a judgment based on the title. I have a family friend, Lynn, 35 female, that was in need, and she has a son, Luke, who is special needs. When he was born, there was a complication, and oxygen didn't get to his brain. He looks and plays like any other boy his age. However, he has a learning disability, speech issues, and small issues with some motor functions. I have a spare property that was empty because I recently married last year and we are living together in another house. My family asked me to let Lynn and Luke stay in that house until they get on their feet. I said yes, no problem, she just has to pay water and electric. The other day I wanted to buy something online. I have a separate account for online purchase for safety reasons. Anyways, the card was declined and the bank account was negative in the amount of $75. I checked the activity and it was video games. I realized that my Xbox in my old house still had that card on file. I told Lynn what happened and she was very apologetic and said she would return the games. I explained that it doesn't work like that and once the game was bought I couldn't return it. I told her that overall he spent around $250. However, the account was only negative in the amount of $75, and that's all I wanted her to refund back to me in order to get the account back in good standing. She said that was a lot of money, it wasn't her son's fault, he doesn't know what he's doing, so on and so forth. I said he knew enough to access the online store, search for the games he wanted, and confirm a purchase multiple times. She then said it was my fault for leaving my card attached to the Xbox. I feel like I've been more than generous with her. I'm not someone who is going to argue and argue, but I will be respected in my own home. Therefore, I told her that I was taking my Xbox away until she paid me my $75 or she could buy her son his own Xbox. I told her that since he doesn't know what he's doing, he could easily buy more games. He was crying while I was disconnecting the Xbox and she was calling me hateful. She later called my family to complain. Some are saying that I'm the idiot because he's just a kid with nothing to do while he's locked inside because of global situation, that I wouldn't miss the $75 and it's a lot for her to pay unexpectedly. I feel like I'm not the idiot because nobody is letting me live in a house for free. There are consequences to people's actions and I feel like I'm being generous only asking for part of the money he spent. So, Reddit, am I wrong? I'm going with you are not wrong here. Your family could give her $75 to pay you if they were that concerned about the kid having entertainment. I feel for the mom, but she already has a good setup with you and could have told the kid to go in another room but used him to emotionally manipulate you. You are not the idiot, and you are a saint to let her stay there. She is ungrateful and entitled. She's not only looking a gift horse in the mouth, she's punching it in the face. If her son is not responsible, then that makes her responsible on his behalf. If I were you, I'd give her 30 days to find another place. She is not your responsibility. You're being incredibly generous, and she's treating you like dog's poop in return. My partner and I aren't married but have been together for 6 years. He has 2 nearly adult sons and I have a same-age daughter. I have sole custody of my child and he has 70-30 of his. When we were originally going to move in together, my daughter expressed a lot of fear about living with men, so I have always held off while working with a therapist. However, in June, my partner had come to live with me due to a desperate financial situation and we could no longer maintain separate houses. Her anxiety has gone up, but it is nowhere near where it would have been years ago, and we are doing the best we can on that. In addition to my house, I also have an asset that essentially amounts to owning a hotel room in a major city. The actual arrangement would put me well over the word count to explain, but the condensed version is that I used to spend a great deal of time there, and both my daughter and I consider it a second home and a safe space to be away from whatever is bothering us. Anyway, I am able to approve guests to use that room without me. And since she got old enough, I approved my daughter to use it freely for herself. She is also planning to go to college in that city and she is going to be living there next year. My partner knew about the room vaguely, but now his kids have found out. They're now bugging me to give them the same access that my daughter has. I don't want to and never plan to. That room has always been a space for me and later my daughter to not deal with men and get away for a bit. This room has been my daughter's literal escape route after an incident on a school trip last year and will literally be her primary home next year. I feel that any one of these things is reason to keep access at me and her only. Now they, backed by my partner a little bit, are saying that we're a family and this is a family asset and so they should be shared and not just belong to one kid. I don't agree. Quite frankly, I think it's creepy that my partner thinks that boys deserve and are free to demand free access to women's spaces, especially one that is basically a girl's bedroom. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot, and it's not a family asset. It's your asset, and you have reasonably given access to your daughter because of emotional needs, and she'll be living there next year. You need to stand your ground on this. Your partner is an idiot for not backing you here and respecting your property and decision. And his kids are wildly entitled and don't respect boundaries. If you do happen to marry this guy, get a prenup, or he's going to take it for his kids and whatever else he feels is now his. Also, if the partner moved in for dire financial reasons, can we ask if they are contributing to rent, etc.? Because moving in doesn't equal all that's yours is mine, and she may already be doing a massive favour if he's saving cash on rent, a real choosing beggar. Thanks for moving us into your home, now we need the other one too.